This is Arrakis, a DOS real-time strategy game that wasn't developed by Cryo, Westwood, Intelligent Games, or Funcom. That's significant because these are the only companies to hold the Dune license, and this particular RTS is developed by one man, friend of the channel Stefan Hendriks. It's very rough around the edges and could best be described as a tech demo, and it's essentially juvenilia because he wrote it aged 15. So why do I bring it up? Well, it shows that Stefan has been working on Dune related projects for a very long time, at least 20 years. And that's why it's pretty cool that I got to make this video, as I'd previously mentioned his work years ago in my own early review of Dune II when I didn't know how to make videos. Hendriks went on to make Dune II the Maker, a 13-year odyssey to remake Dune in an entirely new engine. He's not the first person to mod Dune, as Super Dune II exists, and he's not the first person to make a Dune fan game. That would probably be Sergei Bobrovsky's Dune 3. So why so many caveats? Well, because Dune Dynasty, Legacy, Open Dune, Dune 4, and the Golden Path all exist, and are trying to do roughly the same thing. Recreate Westwood's Arrakeen classic with modernised controls and settings to play nice with modern systems. I'll just throw up this old graphic in Comic Sans from my original review. Yeah, that's a lot of Dune 2. As some of you know, Dune Legacy is my port of choice, and I talked about that recently in glowing terms thanks to an AI update courtesy of an entirely different Stefan. Seriously, what is it about Stefans? So why bother with this one when there are plenty of others? Two reasons. Variety is the spice of life, and the more ways to play classic PC games the better in my mind. More importantly, it turns out that because Stefan started doing this in 2000, his The Maker project predates all the more popular recreations of Dune 2. Except that he reportedly abandoned it in 2013 and started reprogramming it from scratch in 2016 with the same name. So this version of Dune 2 The Maker is actually newer than all the others, but because the Maker project isn't, it's also older. Confused yet? Well, there have been a lot of recent updates to this newer version of the project, and Stefan has been receiving a lot of positive feedback from the media and Twitter about it, and was polite enough to ask me if I could talk about his work. This also gives me an excuse to play more real-time strategy, which I don't need much persuading to do. So let's take a look at some of the pros and cons of the new 0.60 version of The Maker, compared to both Legacy and the original game. I'll not be going into the nitty-gritty, this is just a first impressions kind of thing. Unlike the earlier versions, I actually have sound this time, which is useful, with an excellent rendition of Frank Klepacki's original soundtrack being very pleasing to the ears. Starting with the options for 0.60, oh, that's not good. Let's just go to the skirmish instead then, an addition to the game that the original didn't have, but it comes as standard with most Dune 2 remakes these days. Dune II The Maker has gone with the original left-click style found in early Westwood games, with right-click to remove focus from the unit in question in order to free up your cursor to do other things. This is more in keeping with the original Dune 2, and will please purists. There's also a nicely tabbed unit system in the right pane that's reminiscent of later Westwood games, and Dune 2000 by Intelligent Games published through Westwood. I think it's safe to say that Stefan is a fan of the way Westwood did things, and rightly so. The graphics are sharp and pixelated as opposed to the smoother side of Legacy, but I feel that the art style is reverential, and unlike Legacy, this doesn't require the original assets, and isn't an upscale of those. There's a brief period where you're taking in the new updated look, and then it just feels like Dune 2. One of the more impressive features of The Maker is the zoom with the scroll wheel. You can fly in and out of the desert at will like a glorified ornithopter, and it's a welcome addition, and one that the other recreations lack. Build queuing and multiple unit selection is a thing, but the slab system still felt cumbersome. The Maker's AI is a solid player, and while I was messing around with various systems, it was training up a lethal force to annihilate me. It's been a long time since I saw such beautiful pixelated explosions, and it's this combined with the new art that really sets the title apart from others visually. I didn't see any in-game menu system, and I feel it's necessary to dock points for the sound mixing too. Once everything started opening fire, it drowned out the interactive music, which happened in the original from time to time, but it's not really appreciated in this day and age. Another critique that has already been made is that hitting escape at any point will automatically close the game. This will be addressed in a future update apparently, but it's something to be aware of. Scrolling with the mouse and keys was also very slow on my system, much to the detriment of the game, and there was also some finicky mouse control. I couldn't select unit groups with a double left click, and they weren't moving correctly, or sometimes there were phantom movements when I was trying to click on other things. It took a bit of getting used to. While the actual gameplay itself was pretty good, there are these series of niggling problems that still need to be ironed out. And a lack of a working options menu for me means that Dune 2 the Maker isn't quite ready for prime time yet. But with each update, it's getting that little bit closer. Considering that Dynasty and Legacy, the two biggest alternatives, aren't being touched save for some AI updates, it's really positive to see a third modern remake arise from the ashes of the Maker project that was so influential in the early Dune 2 scene. Stefan has a lot of good ideas here, and I look forward to seeing what 0.70 and beyond brings to the sands of Arrakis. My advice to him: look at what the latest Command & Conquer remaster from Petroglyph did, and also steal some gameplay features from Dune Legacy. And if you have any suggestions for Stefan, feel free to check out his GitHub page. That and the Dune 2 Maker site are linked in the description.